Good morning. Morning, everyone. Welcome. We're very happy to have you here. And I'd like to introduce to you the panelists this morning. You have Dr. Roberto Ridolfi, Adnan Amin, Kande Yumkela, and Christopher Jones. So I'll let you, Roberto.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, if I might offer the apologies of Commissioner Piebalgs, who is not well this morning. I've been working with him now for 10 years, and this is the second time that he's been sick in 10 years, so he does send his apologies. It's the effect we all have after a week of the United Nations General Assembly, unfortunately. But Excellencies, colleagues, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by extending a very warm welcome to you all. I'm delighted to see so many of you here today at this Rural Electrification workshop. And this is an event that the Commissioner considered he really wanted to be here. He considers so important because together with Candy, we've been working so hard to make energy for all a reality. And we're now moving from the step of the determination to do it, And this is really the point at which we want to start making a difference. So from the Commissioner's point of view, may I give a particular welcome to Kande Yumkela, the Special UN Representative for the Sustainable Energy for All Initiative, and Adnan Amin, Director General of IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. And the presence of these two very distinguished guests, I think, gives indication of the importance that we do place on turning this initiative into reality. Their presence here and the valuable input that they can offer will enrich our debate and give added impetus to our efforts to achieve our aims. So we've come together today to provide an answer to one of the crucial challenges of our time, ending energy poverty. We all know that access to clean and affordable energy forms the basis of sustainable economic growth and job creation. As such, it is so vital to empowering communities and people. And this is why the European Union is a strong supporter, and secretly we hope to be the strongest supporter, of the United Nations Secretary General's Sustainable Energy for All initiative. In April 2012, President Barroso set us the ambitious goal of helping developing countries provide access to sustainable energy services for 500 million people by 2030. That's actually worth repeating. Barroso has committed that the European Union will deliver for 500 million people by 2030. And I do remember that when he did that, Roberto nearly had a heart attack, because now he actually has to deliver. And so we're determined to put our money where our mouth is. We've set aside more than €3.5 billion to support sustainable energy activities in our partner countries at regional level and in individual partner countries by 2020. And I'm so pleased to announce today that the European Union will commit today to a €2 million contribution to support the functioning of the Sustainable Energy for All in the coming years, the Secretariat, to make this happen. Energy is also considered to be a priority by so many of our partner countries that we work with. And I'm delighted to report that 30 of our developing partners have chosen energy as a focal sector for their bilateral cooperation with the EU for 2014 to 2020. And it's worth explaining what that means. So the European Union, the European Commission, has said that we will focus on 3 sectors together with our partners in our bilateral cooperation. And of these 3 sectors, 30 countries has chosen energy as one of these 3 sectors. And I think that indicates how much a priority we all consider this to be. So we will make sure that our actions focus on 3 framework conditions to support a flourishing energy sector. Firstly, strengthening political ownership. Secondly, boosting implementation capacity, and thirdly, putting into place financial arrangements to encourage investments. Now, political ownership is already a reality. President Barroso and Commissioner Piebalgs signed joint declarations with European and African countries that have decided to work together to defeat energy policy and bring people sustainable energy services. These declarations will boost our cooperation with the 5 signatory partner countries: Ivory Coast, Liberia, Rwanda, Togo, and Cape Verde, and with co-signing EU member states and donors. In this process, we will be delivering political ownership. As regards implementation capacity, needs on the ground, the EU's €80 million technical assistance facility will help partner countries build a strong energy sector. This technical facility fund is already operating in Liberia, Burundi, Cape Verde, and Rwanda, and we will be rolling it out in many other countries in the coming months. And to tackle the financing challenge, we have an innovative blending of grants and loans to leverage additional investment and to fund much-needed generation capacity and energy infrastructure. For example, the very successful EU Africa Infrastructure Fund, which has already been operating for a number of years, is expected to leverage concrete investments of up to €8 billion, already with the investment train that we have today. In our actions, of course, we haven't forgotten the need to empower the energy poor, and this is so close to the heart of Commissioner Piebalgs. We are acutely aware that over 84% of people without energy access live in rural areas, and that's why we have not wasted any time in taking action against energy poverty. Accordingly, 21 EU-funded projects selected recently will bring better access to modern, affordable and sustainable energy services to some 3 million people in rural areas across Africa. So 3 million out of the 500 million, it's a start. And looking to the future, we have considerably scaled up our efforts in fighting energy poverty. Over the next 7 years, we will seek to allocate over €3 billion in sustainable energy grants to leverage over €15 billion in loans and equity investment. So we want to use these €3 billion to get €15 billion on the ground. In this way, we can plug infrastructure gaps and power businesses, schools, homes, and hospitals. Naturally, this money needs to be spent wisely, and it needs to be spent, above all, differently than in the past. We all know that energy access for all will require innovative, less costly, off-grid solutions that provide sustainable solutions for those who risk being left behind. Hundreds of millions of citizens live in remote areas where we can have little hope of a grid connection in the coming years, and that's why we're here today. Today, after extensive consultations with donors and stakeholders to find ways of boosting rural electrification, the EU has put forward a brand new initiative that we have called the Electrification Financing Initiative, or Electrify for short. And again, that's why we're here today. We need your help to make this initiative, this pioneering initiative, a success. This innovative instrument aims at accelerating access to rural electricity in developing countries by encouraging private sector to invest in new business opportunities. EU grants will complement private financing, bridging the potential financial gap in order to make a project bankable. This will provide the security that investors and banks are expecting and needing to boost investments. The specificity of this new initiative is the following. Should the investment be successful, the grants will be converted into loans at a concessional rate, and the EU will be reimbursed, so a cyclical facility. We will then be able to reinvest the grants in new projects, allowing more and more people to get access to energy and electricity services. Roberto will be explaining this in more detail, and we really need your input to make this innovative new approach work. Another of Electrify's key benefits lies in its potential to take donor funding and to increase it 5- or 10-fold, while at the same time establishing real partnerships geared by economic results with beneficiaries and stakeholders to keep actions sustainable. So as you can see, Electrify is more than a simple financing proposal. It puts forward an initiative business model to leverage more private investments and involve more key stakeholders in all areas of expertise on the global level. So this is where you, the major players in the energy sector, come in. The purpose of bringing you together in a rural electrification workshop, rather than a simple conference, is to launch a process of reflection with you. In short, the Commissioner Piebalgs has asked you to come here today to bring this proposal to life. Now, the Commissioner is counting on this workshop to help us build on the work we have already achieved and to forge a new partnership for investment and greater cooperation. These partnerships should allow leveraging investment funds from new investment opportunities, and these opportunities will, in turn, open up innovative access for avenues on a new scale. The future, this is something I remember Candy saying, the future is not about bringing a single light bulb to a home in a rural area. How Candy put it so eloquently, that only sheds a light on poverty. It is making a systemic change. We need investments of 48 billion a year in the developing world over the next 10, 15 years to make this a reality. And so this 3 billion, the other development funds, national funds in themselves, will never give the answer unless we build these innovative models. And that's what we're trying to do today. We're trying to launch one of the first innovative models in order to try and start the process of getting it to work in practice. And we really believe that we can do it, but only with your help, because you are the guys, you are the ladies that have the real expertise, and that's what we need to bring into this. So what we're trying to do is create an energy revolution across the developing world, bringing sustainable and affordable electricity to all citizens, along with a reliable and sufficient capacity, so that businesses can grow in confidence, and that's so important. Businesses can grow in confidence, creating jobs, creating growth, and creating wealth. So I'm confident that this ambition will guide you over the next 2 days. And the Commissioner is absolutely looking forward to hear about the results of the workshop, and he will be very happy to relay them and also to attend the Sustainable Energy for All Access Committee meeting that he will be attending on the 1st of October. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here, and thank you for the input that you will be giving us over the next couple of days.
Thank you, Chris. That was really an inspiring opening. I have the honor, in fact, to call Mr. Kande Junkella, Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General and Chief Executive Officer of Sustainable Energy for All.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be here on another momentous I will call it a rest station before we launch this major initiative on Electrify, and I'll explain why I say another rest station or gas station in our quest to promote sustainable energy for all. 3 years ago, I remember coming to Brussels discussing with Commissioner Piebalgs and his team. We were preparing for Rio +20, and we needed a boost to make sure that energy becomes a central part of the Rio +20 summit. And I remember cooking up something here with Chris Jones and the cabinet of Piebalgs, and I left the room and quickly called the Secretary General's office and asked his team, can the Secretary General come to Brussels in April, 2 months before Rio? And indeed we came here. Commissioner Piebalgs and the Commission convened all EU development cooperation ministers here, together with the Secretary General. In fact, Secretary General told me it was the first time as Secretary General that he had met all of the EU cooperation ministers at the same time. The good news is the topic was energy. It was the first time it happened. And thanks to that support and the boost, indeed we made energy an important topic in Rio Plus 20. Some of you might not know the history, but in the first Rio summit, they did not want to talk about energy. In Rio Plus 10 in Johannesburg, the South Africans and the EU and others tried to put energy on the platform. It was kicked out again. So our first target under Sustainable Energy for All was how do we make energy central to the development agenda, as the EU had already done here under the leadership of Andreas Piebalgs. We succeeded, and today I'm happy to tell you that yes, in the new post-2015 development agenda, we have a goal on energy, securing sustainable, affordable, and reliable energy for all is a specific goal, and our narrative for sustainable energy for all is in. So we've already achieved our first political goal, making energy central to the development agenda. And as the Secretary General has described energy, energy is the golden thread that runs through all the goals of sustainable development. That boost was important. Question is, what else have we been able to achieve on the Sustainable Energy for All? First of all, let me repeat the targets on the Sustainable Energy for All again. Achieving universal access to energy for all by 2030, doubling the annual rate of improvement of energy efficiency by 2030, and doubling the share of renewables in the global energy mix. So first of all, we've won the first political battle. We have a goal for energy in the next development framework. Second, the whole goal and its targets are based on the narrative of sustainable energy for all. We know also today, based on the recent report by REN21, 140 countries already have some form of renewable energy target in their national energy policy, 140. That's much more than there was 3 or 5 years ago. Second, IRENA, thanks to the leadership of Mr. Adnan Amin, IRENA has also set a target, 30% share of renewables in the energy mix. That's a target now that we've also embedded, adopted by the Council of IRENA. Third, we've now been able, last week in New York, to launch energy efficiency accelerators for cities, dealing with energy efficiency in transport, in buildings, and also in industry that will result in significant, at the gigaton level, of reductions in emissions. This is also already being incubated, and this will be rolled out in Rio, in COP21 in Paris next year. So you will also see a series of initiatives coming out that involves companies and also cities rolling out energy efficiency. In New York also last week, we launched a roadmap for mobilizing $120 billion additional a year to help achieve these 3 targets, sustainable energy for all. What's unique about that is that it was not presented by the UN. It was presented by Bank of America on behalf of a consortium of banks based on a finance committee that was set up by the Secretary General and the President of the World Bank. So we have targets and goals at the global level. We are also helping countries now establish their own domestic targets based on the global targets. We're also putting financing mechanisms behind. Today's event is important. We want to go from commitments to real action on the ground, what some of us are saying, from commitments to kilowatt hours for people on the ground. And this is why Electrify is significant. It is good for ministers and presidents to sign MOUs. It's a big challenge to translate those into real actions on the ground. So I really want to thank again Roberto, Felice, and Chris, and the team for bringing us back here to say, fine, we've achieved our political goals. Now how do we make things happen on the ground? With a new financing instrument. But in addition to that, in New York last week, President Barroso signed and Commissioner Piebalgs signed real MOUs with countries, rolling them out. You put that package together, it was almost $1 billion. Clear countries where this can happen, and we can see examples and people can take advantage of that. I see a number of our partners in the room. I see NEPAD, I see ICRI and others who are beginning to do the work in Africa. So we're very confident that Chris and Roberto, we will have the infrastructure ready on the ground to begin to see how we utilize these new financial resources that you're making clear. For me, the biggest of all of this, and that's where I want to conclude, the biggest achievement is the solid commitment from the European Commission and the United States. Think about it for a minute. What is that commitment? We have 1.3, 1.4 billion people without access to electricity. The EU committed here 3 years ago that their commitment is to connect 500 million people to modern energy services that do not have it today. The EU repeated that commitment last Tuesday in New York, that they stand firmly behind that commitment. But what have they done? As Chris was telling you, they've put their cash behind it. $3.5 billion to leverage 15 billion. So this is a commitment that is solid. It is in EU programming. They've announced it to the world. They repeated it as a firm commitment to all the nations on Tuesday in New York. 500 million. But I remember the Germans also added another 100 million. So the EU plus German commitment is to provide electricity, sustainable electricity services to 600 million people. Then the Americans in August announced, tripled their commitment to Africa under the initiative launched by President Obama. 60 million connections in Africa. If you take an average of 5 million people per household, that's another 300 million. What are we trying to say? We're trying to say between the EU and the United States, we can reduce energy poverty by 50% by 2030. These are solid commitments. The US commitment is about $29 billion. That's real cash. We can track it in terms of numbers of people. We can track it in terms of connections. We can track it in terms of investment. You can't beat that. The challenge we have is how do we convince the rest of the world to take us the rest of the way? We still have another 700 or 800 million people without power. But even that we're going to deal with. As I stand here, we're negotiating with the Indian government right now. We're doing a major event in Gujarat in January, looking at how, yes, we will accelerate investments in renewables and storage technology to ensure that we cover the 350 million people in India as well. So sustainable energy for all, what we've done is exactly what we set out to do, to galvanize the world, to catalyze a global movement for an energy revolution. Three clear targets that will ensure we end energy poverty and at the same time we move towards low carbon energy systems. It is not just words. We started 3 years ago when energy was not in the development agenda. We've put it there. Our partners are backing it up with real cash that will leverage private sector cash. And yes, I believe we can get there. That was the vision of the Secretary General and the President of the World Bank. We are on the march. Today's Electrify initiative is also incubating now how we will do it practically. So I want to thank the EU again. You've just given us a shot in the arm. After all the 40,000 feet speeches in New York, you're bringing us back to earth here to say how do we make it work in the countries. Thank you very much. Please convey our deepest gratitude on behalf of the Secretary General to Commissioner Piebalgs, Mr. Barroso, and the European Commission for saying, look, the energy revolution can happen. But you know, it takes people to make it happen, and it's you. What we have done is create a macro space for you. It is up to you, our players now, to take advantage of these instruments. But again, it happens because Roberto, Chris, Felice, and the rest of us have been spending long hours at night trying to put all of this together. Adnan, thank you for joining us here. The Renewable Corridor, I know you're going to talk about it. We're going to make that happen as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Since I met Kande, I have always admired this showman skills that without which sustainable energy for all would not be what it has become. Thank you, Candy. Now, I am very honored to invite to the podium Adnan Amin, who is the Director General of IRENA. There is no presentation needed. Adnan, you are in the lead for pushing this 30%. Up to you, sir.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a great pleasure to be here in Brussels. Many of us have been on the road for a long time. I was in the very exhausting climate summit for the last week, like Kande and others. I was really looking forward to go home, but those of you who know Roberto Ridolfi knows that he makes you an offer you cannot refuse in the best Italian manner. So I had to be here with you this morning, because I also believe it's the beginning of a very important, very interesting, and very innovative approach to financing. Issues that we have been looking at with the deployment of renewables and scaling up investment have had often to do with the structuring of finance and the fact that the financing available for renewables really isn't made available in the way that incentivizes small-scale private sector investment in developing countries. I met Roberto in Manila some time back when we had an off-grid electrification meeting. Ernesto Macias from the ARE was also with us at that time, and I see many of you in the room who have been in these circles. We had a very interesting discussion there, and again, the question was financing. How are we going to do this? And it's essentially, how are we going to do this for access? Because the discussion in developing countries is not so much about carbon, although it will involve carbon going forward, but it's about access and how do we unlock the potential of people who still live in poverty and over 1 billion who still don't have access to electricity. I'm from a developing country myself, and you see the absolute impact it has on empowering people and creating new lifestyles for the future. So despite some progress over the past decades, still more than 1 billion people don't have access to electricity, and there's really an urgent need to scale up development efforts aimed at achieving universal access. And Kande is our spearhead to making much of this happen, and he has been an inspiring leader for sustainable energy for all. Those of us working in renewable energy also, looking at the work he's doing on access, see the absolute synergy between the different goals of the initiative. To meet the 100% access target by 2030, the pace of expansion of electricity access will have to nearly double. Meeting this target will also require substantial commitment from all stakeholders, those present here, national governments, communities, NGOs, and the private sector, to muster the necessary resources, identify both centralized, on-grid and off-grid solutions, deploy technologies, and help to create the enabling environment that unlocks the transformative development potential of electricity access in rural communities. In this endeavor, we believe in IRENA that renewable energy, given the state of its development, will have a crucial role to play. Our work on renewable power generation costs has shown that renewable energy technologies are now the most cost-competitive option for electrification in many rural areas and islands. Tremendous reductions in the cost of technology, nearly 80% since 2008 for solar PV, for example, have made renewables significantly cheaper than diesel-fired generation or kerosene-based conventional lighting in off-grid areas. And if you take into account the health impacts that this has in households, this is becoming a very compelling case. The technology, therefore, is cost competitive, it's mature, it's modular, adaptable, and environmentally friendly, and the business case for renewable energy in rural electrification exists today. The opportunity that renewables present to increasing access to clean and reliable energy in rural areas is also substantial, as is already seen in several developing countries. Bangladesh, with the largest deployment of solar home systems, 2.6 million at the end of last year, continues to deploy off-grid solar solutions at a pace of 63,000 systems per month. Morocco has used both an off-grid and on-grid approach to enhance rural electrification from under 18% in 1995 to over 97% in 2011, in about 15 years. 15 years is nearly the same time period we have left to 2030. To achieve universal access, I think the Moroccan example shows that this is possible. So it is possible, but we must scale up deployment substantially to meet the set target. This will require significant efforts by governments and the broader development community to help create an environment that attracts further investments into the sector and encourages the participation of the private sector and local entrepreneurs. Unlocking entrepreneurship, in our belief, will be one of the central achievements of efforts like the one that we are launching today. So part of this effort lies in engaging with practitioners and understanding the practical challenges they face and finding ways and mechanisms through which those can be addressed. Supporting our member states in this process, IRENA's programmatic activities have targeted different stakeholders and across the key pillars of energy access, of policy, financing, technology, and capacity building. Recently, IRENA, in cooperation with the Asian Development Bank and the Alliance for Rural Electrification, has organized the second International Off-Grid Renewable Energy Conference in June 2014 in Manila, the Philippines. We brought together nearly 4 key stakeholders from the sector to discuss what needs to be done to scale up deployment of off-grid renewable energy solutions. I met many of you who were in Manila at breakfast. The key message we received from the private sector and financial institutions was clear. We need to rethink the way off-grid solutions have been regarded in the past. We need to move away from the ideology that is centered around grants and a project-by-project approach and move towards a more holistic, programmatic, market-based approach. Governments need to be further committed and introduce policies and incentives that are targeted, level the playing field for renewables, and drive deployment. This is the only way that the private sector can be engaged at a scale that is consistent with our ambitions. A crucial centerpiece to the energy access challenge is financing. Increasingly significant funding is being raised at the global level through development agencies and banks, at a national level through public financing, and the project level through innovative financing mechanisms such as crowdfunding. The momentum created by the Sustainable Energy for All initiative, hearing Kande this morning, you know what kind of momentum is behind it, as well as the contribution of Europe Aid, are effectively contributing to the effort of bridging the financing gap from the current around $9 billion to an estimated 45 billion needed annually to achieve universal access. This effort has multiple dimensions: raising sufficient capital, but also making that capital accessible for the small-scale energy access projects. The role of public financing in creating markets, de-risking investment, and leveraging private capital cannot be underestimated. A case in point is in IRENA is the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development's project facility that provides $350 million in concessionary loans for renewable projects in developing countries. The first cycle, which began in 2012, resulted in the allocation of $41 million, which leveraged an additional double of that funding from other funding sources to 6 medium-sized renewable energy projects to be implemented in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Pacific. These projects will have a direct positive impact on the livelihood of 300,000 people by bringing power to rural communities and stimulating development by supporting schools, tourism, health centers, and small village businesses. The principle behind the Abu Dhabi Fund is that it is not a grant-based approach to development, which has really not shown much traction in the past. It is an approach that intends to provide very low-cost financing into business models that are already proving their worth at country level and which have real ownership and traction, and which begin to build a real market. We're also seeing a strong business case for renewable energy solutions on islands. Island countries are often saddled with the low electrification rates, high costs of imported fossil fuel, and among the highest electricity generation costs in the world, and isolated power grids, but blessed with clean energy potential from sunshine, wind, and the ocean, like many of our countries. In supporting island countries in their transition to a renewable-dominated energy system, IRENA has deployed a Lighthouses program to facilitate the formation of local and regional partnerships, as well as the engagement of the international community. As part of this program, together with the government of Samoa and the government of New Zealand, we held a renewable energy forum at the recently concluded SIDS conference in Samoa. The message from the Prime Minister of Samoa, who opened the conference, was clear. SIDS are convinced of the key role that renewable energy plays in the global transition towards a sustainable energy system. They are rich in resources and the political will. What they need is the money that the EU is going to bring to the table. Addressing the major development challenges faced by the global community today will require us to embark on a collaborative pathway that leverages our respective institutional strengths. In our endeavor to deliver modern energy services to all, it remains important for us to continually engage with practitioners, financing institutions, governments, and other stakeholders to ensure that each stakeholder is able to play their respective roles in scaling up renewable energy in rural areas. And renewable energy solutions are a means of stimulating economy-wide development as a pathway to fighting poverty. I congratulate EuropeAid on their continued leadership in mobilizing expertise, technology, and financing towards this important objective of extending energy access to all. And I wish you an extremely productive 2 days of discussion. I'm sure that the discussion will yield very important insights into the further development of the initiative, and we look forward to our continued engagement and discussion with the Commission on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it's up to me to launch now, after these Augustus remarks. Excellencies, Your Excellency, Kande Junkella, Excellencies, representatives of governments, experts of the private sector, colleagues. As my good friend Christopher Jones, on behalf of Commissioner Peebles, said, we want to be now practical and we need to deliver. And the last weeks, and I would say months, have been struggling to find a solution to the problem of too much risks, too little finance, too little possibilities on the regulatory environment. And it looked a few months ago as an insurmountable task for all of us. But the driving force has been, as it was said, not to bring a bulb for giving light to poverty, but in fact to turn a dramatic situation of lack of access to electricity into a beautiful opportunity. The correlation of energy to development and growth is one. You can't have any other single issue or factor more correlated than access to energy. And as it was said, it's not difficult to find the money for the big projects. The big hydropower dams, or even big transmission lines, big projects find their way through the financial markets and they get the right package. We are assisting this process through our blending facilities. The problem is to do a blending of a small scale, to blend not only money, the right different kind of money, but to blend risks with opportunities and who's able to hedge the risk, to blend expertise. In the past, traditionally, we have been launching call for proposals. I would define them NGO type. And these were brilliant proposals, extremely important, interesting, and viable. But we need to have more. We believe that, in fact, this scheme, Electrify, will bring together the NGO community together with the private sector. Because I've seen personally, in 20 years of Africa, that the very communion between the NGO approach in a community and the private sector approach ensures sustainability at the right price. That is the key word, sustainability. In this line, we have been working to develop this proposal. And this proposal is the overcoming of the traditional limitations of call for proposal. This Electrify is an initiative that must be sustainable and, in fact, self-reinforcing. How to achieve all this? Well, we have consulted the industry, and I want to start thanking here the Alliance for Rural Electrification, the Secretary General, the chairperson, and all the members of the Alliance that have worked with us. I would continue to thank Euroelectrics, the utilities that have also participated, because we asked them, listen, you are the industry. Why don't you tell us what could be a scheme that works for you? And of course, we had to go to the banks. So we went to the banks, our European Investment Bank, of course, but a little bit more to those banks that are doing this with the private sector, which in the case of the European Union are the EDFIs, the European Development Financial Institutions. And we have asked them, listen, this is the industry, these are the financial institutions, why don't we start talking in such a way that the scheme will born as a sustainable one and not out of a bureaucrat like me. I would like to say that this operation has been possible only through the dedication of the friends of the Alliance for Rural Electrification, of the friends of EDFIs. In particular, I would like to thank Mark Boiting, that will present to you this afternoon the proposal. This is a workshop. If anybody came here to have fun and enjoy a couple of days in Brussels, this is wrong. Workshop means work. And then there is a shop. But the important part of the workshop, in my view, is the work. Work means that you will please be asked to comment on the proposals. This morning, the authorities, the personalities, and then there will be speeches, but in the afternoon, you come back here to work. And work means tell us what you think should be corrected, modified in this proposal in order to make it work. We start with the allocation from the global public good and challenges. I'm very, very happy to hear that in the goals we managed to insert energy. But like in football, you need to score the goal. And to score the goal, you need a team. And the team must set the ball to the striker so that the striker can make goal. And for us, this building of the team is Electrify. We want to build this team so that the match will go on and we will score that goal and many others. All these goals are inside the poverty that we want to fight and win. As I said, the key message is that sustainability cannot take place without a business person, a businesswoman or man that is behind there and says, I want to strive, I want to make money. Without that, we go nowhere, believe me, because that is really the trigger, especially in a sector which is supposed to pay for electricity. Now, we have to address poor people that have not a lot of consumer power in the pocket to pay for this electricity. That's why we come in the picture. That's why we will assist. But we will assist in a way that creates, as Chris has mentioned, a revolving fund. Possibly. So when we ask what is the major constraint, the major constraint is not a lack of finance, but lack of the right finance. We understand that equity in this kind of business is not forthcoming to 50, 60% of the project investment, is perhaps about 10, 15%, 20, which is not a lot. We understand that the senior loan providers would like to see this equity up to 50%, perhaps 51%, in order to intervene with their own equity or with their own senior loans. And therefore, there is a gap. And that gap calls us, the public action, into Electrify. So Electrify is all this. And it is an initiative that is bound to become a little bit aggregating other donors. So I invite really Kande Junkela to do this work of putting together other people with the idea. And we are willing to discuss the idea. This also is for Irina. We would like to see, and today we invited the Islamic Development Bank, with whom I talked in Manila, because we think that money should really concentrate in a single or in 2 or 3 big schemes that can work and deliver. Let me try to conclude this small presentation. We would like to see that out of the workshop this afternoon and tomorrow morning, we improve the paper that was sent to you and distributed. We improve the paper to such a level that then the start will be easier. We will have a lot of proposals flowing into the system. We will have a light system to administer all that, and the system will be as market-driven as possible. For example, when we talk about technical assistance, believe me, in all my experience on the ground, I have seen that when you pay for something, you value it. If you don't pay for something, you don't give it any value. So when we are talking about technical assistance to project proposers in order to make the project proposal better, well, this entrepreneur, this driving force behind the project should pay for it. Perhaps not the totality of the fees of the service, but without that payment, without that investment, there is no driver, there is no success. So we want to move into that, and I want to tell you that the first obstacles that we are passing through the help of Cabinet and the determination of Cabinet has been in our bureaucratic machine. We have a number of regulatory problems, financial problems that we have to pass. I want also to thank individually Chris Jones, because with this impetus and of course under the leadership of the Commissioner Peebles, we managed to propose this joint declaration, these MOUs in New York, and I want to thank Kande for the assistance that Commissioner and President Barroso received from your services. Because that is now an example. We have received already many requests from other countries, ministers, that they want to do the same process. And that is the process that is needed to have the regulation that allows somebody to invest in rural areas and be able to sell legally electricity. Now, that rural areas is a community, is a village with a social dynamic, with poverty, and therefore we need somebody that knows that community, and these are typically NGOs. So the civic society organizations are fundamental in the business model that we try to propose. And why rural? Because urban, it's easier. The incremental cost of a connection in an urban area is very, very, very much lower than a connection in the rural area, in the remote area, where the main grid will arrive, and indeed will arrive, but it will arrive only in 10, 15, 20 years' time. We can't wait that time. We have to start and act now. This is the spirit of our support to sustainable energy for all. And in fact, the next step will be for us to ask Chris Jones on behalf of Commissioner and Kande Junkela for sustainable energy for all. And also I will call to the podium Katrin Lichtenberg of UNOPS so that we will sign this contribution from the European Commission to sustainable energy for all. That will happen as soon as I'm through with my speech, which is in a few seconds. After that, you will have served a coffee break, which will be only 20, 30 minutes maximum. And after that, we start the proceedings of this day. There will be a number of very interesting presentations. I invite you to mingle, to get contacts. I would like also that my team, the energy team of Felice and Paolo, makes yourself visible to all the guests so that for any kind of problem there is the whole unit of energy at your disposal in order to solve any problem. But as I repeat, and I conclude, the objective of these 2 days workshop is to work. So to make the proposal that is before you a better one and a sustainable one. With these few words, it is my pleasure, and thanking again all the partners that have made this initiative possible, it is my pleasure to call upon here for the signature of the contract with Chris Jones on behalf of Commissioner Peebles, Kande Junkella, also Madame Katrin Lichtenberg, for the signature of UNOPS, for the signature of this agreement. The agreement that you will witness is an agreement for the support to sustainable energy for all, coordination, dissemination, and tracking the global efforts. Because figures were mentioned, and we have to track these figures. The photographers, please. Can I ask you a round of applause to encourage the signature? Felice is used to signatures, as he was in New York making all ministers to sign something. I hope they knew what they were signing, Felice.
And I'm in shape. No, for real. Tell.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think this can indeed conclude the first part of our morning. I would like to thank Kande Junkella, my good friend Adnan, Chris Jones for the intervention. Madam, thank you very much for this signature that will, of course, give necessary credit to the stimulating work of sustainable energy for all.